Presentation of dialogue on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore family's legacy of building the great state of Idaho.
Coming up, its programs have won 32 Emmys, 15 Peabodys, and 3 Academy Awards. How does the series POV on PBS choose the documentaries it airs? And how is the world of nonfiction film changing? A conversation with Simon Kilmurry, the executive director of POV, next on Dialogue. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome to Dialogue. I'm Marcia Franklin. For more than 25 years, the television series POV has been bringing groundbreaking documentaries to PBS viewers. From the 1996 Academy Award-winning film Maya Lin, A Strong, Clear Vision, to the 2011 Emmy Award-winning Food, Inc., an investigation into America's food production industry, POV has garnered popular and critical acclaim for its productions. Since 1999, one of POV's key leaders has been Simon Kilmurry. First as Chief Operating Officer and now as Executive Director, Kilmurry helps curate the films for POV, picking 16 to 18 each season out of nearly 1,000 submissions. So what do he and his team look for, and how have the films changed over the years? I sat down with Kilmurry when he visited Idaho in 2012 to learn more. I started by asking him why he's drawn to documentaries.
I watch hundreds of films a year, which is a great honor and a great privilege. And I never cease to be fascinated by people's lives, by people's experiences, by going places that I would never go or meeting people I would never meet. I love being surprised.
Like that?
Like that. I love those little moments that are unscripted and unplanned. And I love being challenged. I like to be put in a position where my own preconceived notions, my own ideas of something are held up to question and to scrutiny, and where I'm made to really think about them. So I love the fact that documentaries can take me into these places that I would never go, and you know, I like to say, I love documentaries because I'm curious about the world. But I like documentaries that make me even more curious, that don't answer all my questions for me, that make me want to go and investigate a little bit more and ask some more questions, and questions which I may not have thought of before.
Do you think the general audience feels that way? Are documentaries doing better, so to speak? More people watching them, more interest?
I think certainly there's more people watching them. I think over the past 10 or 15 years, we have seen a kind of burgeoning of documentaries, no longer just as a form of conveying information, but as a choice on people's entertainment menu. People go to theaters to see documentaries now. There's art house theaters all across the country where documentaries play regularly. They're not great box office films, but they do reasonably well. They gain attention of policymakers. They have impact on people's lives. I see it. So I think, and they're more widely available online, on broadcast. There's been a growth of documentary film festivals, which I go to, and I see people lining up, waiting to get into theaters, and that's exciting. Yeah. Do
you think there was a turning point? Because I know I go to Sundance as often as I can, and I used to be able to get into the documentaries quite easily. After Fahrenheit 9/11, I noticed that there were more people in line. I don't know if that was the turning point or not, but certainly now it's very difficult to get into the documentary films at Sundance.
Yeah, I think actually over the past few years, the documentaries at Sundance have been better than the narrative films. I'm not sure why that is, but I think there's definitely much more interest. There's been the growth of festivals like Silver Docs, Big Sky in Montana. All across the country, there are these kind of regional festivals that bring great documentaries into people's communities, and audiences really seem to want to experience them.
So you get about 1,000 submissions a year to POV.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Your season is not that long.
No.
So how do you choose? That's a big question. but what is the process by which you narrow it down and then narrow it down again?
It's a pretty extensive and involved process. We work with a team of about 25 filmmakers, professional filmmakers, who screen all of the submissions at least twice. So everything's getting two sets of eyes. So we're not being skewed by one opinion. And those films all go into a database with evaluations and scores. And myself and my colleagues, there's about 5 of us on the production and programming team, are looking at those reports, pulling out films that sound interesting, that are scoring high, or films which actually get disparate scores, that if one of our screeners is scoring very high and someone is scoring very low, because there's something in there which is contentious, which can often means there's something in there that's interesting. So we narrow it down to about the top 300 through that. And then myself and 5 other people, we're watching those, talking about them. We have weekly meetings. We're watching dozens of films a week. And eventually by this kind of all happens over the summer, and by the end of summer we end up with a list of about 40 films. They're in various stages. Some of them are kind of works in progress, still in production. Some of them are absolutely finished. Those we take to an editorial committee. And we have an editorial committee which is an advisory committee. It's made up of 6 independent filmmakers, or people from the independent film community, festival programmers, and 6 public television programmers from across the country. And we bring them together in New York for 4 or 5 days, where they screen and talk about the films with each other. And that to me is one of the most interesting processes, because we get filmmakers and public television people talking to each other about what makes for good film, what makes for good storytelling, what makes for good television, and often ends up in some very surprising set of conversations. Out of that weekend, I have a list of the films which they think we should go for, and I'm then beginning to curate the series and seeing what we can afford to get, looking for themes, looking for a range of subject matter, a range of approaches to documentary film, which feels like it has both coherence and variety within it. And I'm also looking at, okay, if I can't do this year, I can do it in the following season, or this is still in production. We want to go back and work with this filmmaker a little more closely on this particular film. So then it becomes a much more, really kind of getting my hands into the curatorial part of it. So it's a long, involved process, but it's a really rewarding one, and I really value the input that I get from our editorial committee. It's illuminating, and it's always a surprise what they come back with.
What's the spark that you're looking for?
I'm looking to be surprised. I'm looking for films that have an emotional resonance. I think you want to connect emotionally somehow, whether it's you fall in love with the character, you get angry, you are afraid for them, but it's something which has some kind of gut emotional reaction. But I think the surprise and emotion are probably 2 of the main things. And then I'm looking for freshness, looking for whether it's a fresh story, whether it's something I've not heard about, or it's a completely new angle in something which may be familiar. The series is called Point of View. We're looking for those kind of new perspectives, those new and surprising points of view, which I think a documentary is very well. It's kind of not unique, but an extremely effective form for taking you on that intimate journey.
Does it matter to you whether you think a film might affect change in some way?
That's not a primary factor at all, and it's fantastic when they do, but I think the primary obligation of a filmmaker is to story. And if you have a great story which involves affecting change, you're going to be much more effective at achieving that. If you are going in to make a film for the purpose of affecting change, that becomes something else.
Polemic.
Yeah.
Do you feel the need to fact check what comes in to make sure that it is in fact accurate or hasn't been set up in some way?
Well, there's a number of things that we do. We look at obviously all the people who have funded the film to make sure that there's an editorial independence on the part of the filmmaker. We will go in and ask specific questions about, where did you come up with this? How do you draw this conclusion? Who are the people you talk to about, such and such an issue? To get a sense of, we're not looking for balance, but we're looking for accuracy. We're looking for fairness. We're looking for honesty, and we're looking for transparency. But not everything is going to go through a full fact-checking process. A personal story may not need it, but a film like Food Inc., where there's a series of statistics and claims and counterclaims, you want to know that those filmmakers have done the due diligence to check and double check where they're getting their information that they're putting into the film. So those we do, but we do we have to, like any outlet, ultimately rely on the integrity of the people who we're working with, and we spend many years working with them, and fortunately we've the filmmakers that have been on POV have by and large done their due diligence to make sure that they're putting out as accurate information as they possibly can.
Then how closely do you work with filmmakers as they continue to craft their work?
We never take editorial control, and it's very important that POV is presenting the vision of those filmmakers, not our own vision. So once we're on board, we give a lot of editorial support to those films. We spend hours watching rough cuts and giving notes and giving suggestions, with the idea that the filmmaker will synthesize those along with other feedback they're getting to build something which fulfills their vision of a story. And that's an incredibly rewarding process when we can find something early on and help the filmmaker achieve their goals, not achieve our goals.
It must also be fun to discover a filmmaker.
Yeah. We take great pride. I think one of our roles within public television is also making sure we're bringing in fresh voices, that there's a diversity to our lineup in terms of subject matter and who's making the films. And when we can identify new filmmakers, help nurture them to their first national broadcast. But what's really rewarding is when they come back, not just to us, but to other public television series. And we've helped them become public television producers.
I've noticed a lot more international films in your lineup, or films made out of our country, films with subtitles, which typically people say, oh, folks won't want to watch subtitles. Is this a change that we're seeing, more international films? One that comes to mind recently that I really, really enjoyed, I think I watched it twice, was Last Train Home, about China, made by a Canadian filmmaker, but in China.
He's actually Chinese.
He lives in Canada.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So is this a trend that we're seeing with more international?
I think so. I think when the series first started, it was only American filmmakers, even if the subjects might have been international in scope. Sometimes it was really only international US-based filmmakers. I think that's no longer a kind of valid programming approach, because first of all, there's many American filmmakers working internationally, bringing international stories back here, and we have international filmmakers working here, telling U.S. stories, and we have. I'm seeing many of our films, our U.S.-based films, have international lives, and I think there's much more of a fluid dialogue across borders now, and I think there's a curiosity about the world, which is can only be good. I think the question about subtitles has come up over the years. If I'm hearing someone speaking in a foreign language, I want to hear their voice. I don't, if it means a little bit of extra effort on my part, I have to read some stuff on the screen. I'd rather hear the emotion in their voice, because even if I can't understand it, I can hear a tone, I can hear hesitancy that I wouldn't if everything's dubbed. So I like that. It gives me an added texture to a story. We have not only have, I mean, there are more international filmmakers on this series, but we have more films too.
Well, I was going to say that the technology is more accessible to people now.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean that there's a better product always, but more people have cameras in their hands. More people feel that they can be a filmmaker.
That's true. About 10 years ago, we would get about 500 films a year. That was a lot. And now we're getting about 1,000. Now, so we see the quantity of submissions going up. We don't always see a direct correlation in the quality of those submissions. They have gone up, for sure, but not in the same proportion. I think it's great that more people have the ability to, shoot video, edit it at home, play with storytelling. That can only be a good thing. But that doesn't make everyone a filmmaker. Crafting a story that holds someone's attention for an hour or 90 minutes or even 30 minutes is a really hard thing to do.
And it can take years. Really, people don't realize how long you have to spend with your character sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that makes POV films so compelling is you have filmmakers who spend 3, 4, 5 years with people, longer sometimes. And that creates a level of intimacy and layers of complexity and storytelling and nuance in people's lives that you can't get if you just drop in for a few weeks and then leave. That's fine, but that's a different kind of storytelling. We forget the risks that they take in getting these stories. Filmmakers, they're out there a lot of times by themselves or with a very small crew, and they're putting themselves in these very vulnerable positions to bring stories back to us. It used to be only investigative journalists or journalists would be doing this kind of work, but with I think the pressures on commercial journalism, filmmakers are really filling those gaps.
So when you look at the 25-plus year history of POV as a curator, are there films that stand out to you that you remember?
Yeah. Actually, there's films which stand out to me, which I remember as a viewer before I came to POV. And one which I go back and watch kind of fairly regularly, and it still haunts me, is A Silver Lake Life by Tom Joslin, Peter Friedman. A love story, 2 men in Silver Lake in Los Angeles, dying of AIDS and caring for each other. And it was one of the early video diary films to use video as a diary element within the film. And it's this heartbreaking, beautiful story of 2 lovers dying. And this was at the height of the AIDS crisis, where there was a lot of fear and hyperbole about the disease. And when I saw this as a viewer before I came to the series, it was one of those moments where it really put a human face on something where in the political culture, in the popular media culture, these people were being demonized, but this made it human.
Sometimes I hear about documentaries. I don't want to go see a documentary because I don't want to hear about depressing stuff.
Yeah.
How do you rebut or acknowledge that?
There's no question. A lot of filmmakers and films filmmakers are drawn to serious subjects, if it's human rights or immigration or whatever the serious issue might be. I think it's important that we have to, this is a serious world. We have to look at some of these things. But I think people shouldn't focus on necessarily the seriousness of a subject, but on a person's story. And I think when you peel back, some of the overlaying issues in a film, you actually get to a lot of stories of hope and change, of people, standing up for what they believe in, of having integrity, of struggling against something, and that I think is actually quite a hopeful thing. And there's a surprising amount of light moments and pathos in a lot of films. At the same time, it's great when a film is just it's fun and entertaining. A film like we had this season, Guilty Pleasures, about romance novels. Who would have thought, this film actually does have serious issues in it, but it's light, it has a light touch, a light tone, but it deals with issues of relationships and love and yearning and struggle, and but as a very approachable, easy way into it. So I think there's room for both, but I think even in the very serious films, there's a lot of hope, and otherwise it would be too hard sometimes.
How much pushback do you get on some of the films that you show?
It depends on the film. We've gotten pushback on quite a few titles, either from political figures or corporations, and I'm very pleased that we've actually never, at least since I've been there, we've never made a change in a film based on any kind of upset or concern, be it for political reasons, or it might get some corporation upset or someone else upset. And when films do generate that kind of attention, we are fiercely protective of our filmmakers and protecting their independence. We will listen to people. We always provide a chance for any of our viewers to comment on our films. We welcome feedback, positive, negative, debate about the issues in the films. We think that's a good thing, but we do protect the editorial independence of our filmmakers. That's very important.
And the outreach component for the films is another critical piece of it, isn't it? The life of the film after it airs. Before
and after it airs. I mean, POV, I think, back in the early 90s was really a pioneer in looking at films as a tool for engaging people in dialogue around issues, and that's just become more and more common, which is fantastic. So we do a lot of outreach. We have a community engagement and education team which develops lesson plans and discussion guides. We do about 600 local community screenings a year with our network of, I think, 5,000 organizations who signed up for screenings. Those are all free. And providing the tools and the films for people to be able to bring communities together and talk about the issues in films, I think is a wonderful way to get people to talk about hard issues in a space that's safe and comfortable.
You mentioned the word free in there for the screenings.
Yeah.
People also expect programs to be free now on the internet. Yeah. At the same time, you have filmmakers who've struggled for upwards of 7 years, sometimes is the average time that I've heard to make some of these films, and they've invested a lot of money. So how do you traverse the balance between providing the film for free and helping the filmmaker recoup what they've put into it?
Yeah, no, that's a big issue for filmmakers. I'm a great believer in the mission of public television, public media, in providing content for free. I think it's important. I think we pay for it in the few pennies that go to public media from our tax dollars per citizen. It's a tiny, tiny investment, but in return we get this content for free. And the reality is how we engage with television has changed dramatically over the past few years, and people are no longer just tuning in at a certain time on a certain night. So we have to balance the needs of the audience with the needs of the filmmakers. So what we have done is when we have a film that goes on broadcast, we will then have a catch-up window when people can watch it for free online. That could be 30 days, it could be 60 days, or sometimes longer, or we'll bring it out in certain windows through the life of the license. And then the filmmaker retains those other online rights, so they can sell it on iTunes, on Netflix, or on other online platforms where they can retain some revenue. At the same time, we try and help filmmakers find those outlets, be it home video distributors, international sales. We do a lot of work with the filmmakers on making those connections, so that if a film airs on POV, they might also try and sell it to Canada, to the UK, to Europe. And I think we're seeing people putting a much more sophisticated patchwork of sources of revenue together for films, which they weren't doing a few years ago.
Where do you see POV going next in its next 25 years?
Well, it's interesting. I hear a lot of conversation about people's short attention span, and with the growth of online video, people want just short films. I think there may be a certain truth to that, and I think the advent of digital distribution outlets gives us the opportunity to engage in a much wider variety of films, unencumbered by a specific broadcast length, which is exciting. And we're doing a lot of shorts. But I still think there's got to be a space. There has to be a space for long-form storytelling, and I don't believe that's going to go away. Novels have not gone away. Just because movies are being made, or because printing and distribution technologies have changed. People love engaging and going deep into a story, and I think that's just going to give us much more opportunity to do it in different ways. And I think no one knows where this is going to go, but I think this all changes through experimentation and through being willing to kind of throw things at the wall and see what sticks sometimes, and we'll see where it goes. But I think it's an exciting time.
Well, thanks for taking the time to share part of the POV story.
Thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure.
You've been listening to Simon Kilmurry, the Executive Director of POV on PBS. To learn more about POV or to watch this program again, check out our website. Just go to idahoptv.org and click on Dialogue. For Dialogue, I'm Marcia Franklin. Thanks for tuning in.
Presentation of Dialogue on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore family's legacy of building the great state of Idaho. Check out our website, become a friend on Facebook, or follow us on Twitter.